Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the YouTube show Tuesday Night Trek. Its mission, to catalog every piece of Star Trek media, to keep alive the spirit of Gene Roddenberry, to boldly go where no YouTube show has gone before.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Again,
no, you're good. You're good.
Phil excited there. Phil's all excited.
His
Peter's sputtering.
That felt good to play that clip again. But anyways, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. And yes, somehow, just like Palpatine returned when he shouldn't have, Tuesday Night Trek is back in the form of beginner series tonight, because myself and Baron, we are going to be talking about the Star Trek Expanded Universe. And Phil pointed this out to me last night. I didn't even intend for this, but Phil pointed it out. Y'all talking Star Trek, and it's Tuesday. So Tuesday Night Trek is back. And boy, is Phil excited. He's saying they said they'd never do it again, that they were finished. It was over. But tonight it's back. Tuesday Night Trek. It's back. Get your floaties. And then other things like you got one back, three more to go. Next is Animation Friday, and he's throwing a dig at Pop Talk in there.
Oh, it did not only to Pop Talk, but also to 540 Studio with Chase. So, yeah,
that is true.
Basically, Phil is a troublemaker. He always has been, always will be. So, I guess we can live with that.
Exactly. But anyways, though, like I said, we're tonight going to be talking about the Star Trek Expanded Universe. So Star Trek goes way beyond what we have in, of course, the TV shows where it started and the movies. Just like with Star Wars, there is books, there's games, there's the animated shows, and we're going to touch base on a lot of that tonight. So, Baron, the floor is yours. Where do we start?
But I just want to start out. I am all the Star Trek. There. Gotta get that out of the way since you had to do the palp thing, which is done far better in Dark Empire. But we're not talking Star Wars, folks. And the big misnomer too is a slight correction. And I know I'm at fault for saying it, but it's not expanded universe. It's expanded universes. There are, like I said, when Star Wars was bought out by Disney, and they said, "Oh yeah, the expanded universe is dead." All the fans going nuts, and us Star Trek fans going, "Oh, first time."
I went back, by the way, into the title and added that extra S.
Oh, great, excellent! I didn't even look. So, but like I said, I kept on saying Star Trek EU when it should be Star Trek EUs because it's. It's gigantic. And, really, what are you going to do when 69 comes? I know. Excellent, dude. No, but 1969. And you bring to the last episode of Star Trek. Yeah, they were planning on a fourth season, hoping for a fourth season, but it never came about. And the fans are getting ravenous. And so they had to do something to keep alive, keep this fervor alive. And, you had, I think it's probably, you could say, in America, that is, one of the first big conventions that was centered around one entity in science fiction. That was Star Trek. And that was in New York, in the 74. But to help placate also, Filmation went out and did an animated series with blessing by Gene Roddenberry. And, there was a couple iterations that they were going to do. One was basically Star Trek Family, where you had adults with their kids on a planet or a starbase or something out there. It's been a long time since I looked at all this stuff, but needless to say, that was slammed down, especially with the rule: no kids, no robots, because of, well, guess what? A little thing called Lost in Space, and so they wanted to be, Gene, obviously, but also Gene Kuhn, the other Gene, and Dorothy Fontana and others that were involved wanted to try to keep this into a phase of true science fiction. And that's what they tried to do. They tried to make the animated series basically the 4th and 5th season of Star Trek, because there were 2 seasons of it. And I suppose if you want to pop that up, folks, hit the button,
Absolutely.
Frank. Hit the button. So there we go. That's our esteemed crew right there. And the show itself is kind of in a back and forth universe, but they were able to get most of the cast back, and and basically all the cast was really eager to do so. But Filmation, being an animated Saturday morning series, didn't have a huge budget. They were only going to intend on bring back Shatner, DeForest, Nimoy, and Doohan because of Doohan's ability to do voices. And Leonard Nimoy stood up and said, "No, no, no, no." And of course, his wife, obviously, Major Bart Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Nimoy basically stood up and said, "No, I'm not going to do this unless you bring in George, Nichelle, and Walter." So they were able to get enough of the budget to do George and Nichelle. They just couldn't bring back Chekhov. But don't feel too sorry about him as we go on in here. You'll see why.
Right.
So, but they added a couple of new characters in there. Well, who's going to replace Chekhov? Well, it's Lieutenant Eriks, the gentleman behind Jimmy Doohan character.
Isn't
Scotty.
he the guy that's got an arm coming out his chest?
3 legs and 3 arms. Yep. And
Wow.
he's an Indoan, and of course, Doohan provided the voice for him because, again, like I said, he's a big was a big voice guy as well, and of course, Major Bart providing the voice of Maress, who is the cat-like figure back there. No, this isn't Furry Con or Furry Trick, but she's a Cation, which is basically a Pheonoid species, including tail. So, but other than that, you had, of course, Shatner, Nimoy, Kelly, Nichols, Takai, Doohan, and of course Bart Roddenberry. Yes. So they start off on that journey. And of course, well, this picture is backwards. My apologies for that. But and they try to do their best with this, with a half-hour show or less than a half hour, with commercials and such. And they tried to get the true feel of it, even trying to imitate how the Starship Enterprise was over space. Well, here's one of the title cards, and this is why you should not be feeling too bad about Mr. Koenig, even though it's been great to have him on the show. He wrote one of the episodes. He writes as well as acts. And,
well, real quick, I want to mention something. Just for those wondering, those of course that have been around the channel since the beginning, the original plan for Tuesday Night Trek was indeed, before we went into the movies, we were going to cover the animated series too, but Nerdporial, of course, and I'm glad that we did, because it was a great show, but Nerdporial had the idea to go over the fan-made Star Trek Continues because of how well it set up the motion picture. So we ended up doing that instead, and the animated series just kind of fell by the wayside. But maybe after this, I'll go back and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, you should give it a try. I mean, it doesn't necessarily hit the mark, but there's one thing that was good about this. You didn't have to have a budget for costuming. So you could make wild aliens all you want in this series, much more than the original series. Obviously, technical, budgetary, everything across the board. That's why you had Lieutenant Eriks with 3 arms, 3 legs, and kind of, I don't know, a calf head. I don't know how you described his head on there. But of course, they became very much fan favorites as well. And you see them popping up here and there, even in some fan films. And of course, Vic Mignogna with Star Trek Continues, and did a great job, and he did that great finale. That Eugene Roddenberry said that should be an official canon ending for Star Trek. But I take everything that Eugene Roddenberry says with a grain of salt, because our Rod Roddenberry, we should call him, because just look what he did to Star Trek afterwards. And we had James Cawley's, of course, Star Trek Phase 2, And before that was New Voyages. They changed the name along the way. Well, those were the two top fan films. I'm not going to be delving into those necessarily because they, as much as I love to, there's just so much material, and those can be hit another time with
of course.
Wonder. But here you have The Infinite Vulcan, written by, of course, Mr. Walter Koenig. David Gerald came back. And David came back with more troubles. And yes, they even got the voice of Cyrano Jones back. So you got that original character, voicing it. So that was a nice touch. And of course,
didn't the guy that played Harry Mudd come back for an episode?
Well, there it is. Mudd's Passion, also written by the same guy who did the previous Mudd episodes. And yes, Roger C. Carmel did indeed come back and play Harcourt Fenton Mudd. And
Harcourt Fenton Mudd.
So he was in there. It's an interesting story. I think you'd have it. But all along the series, you even had Ted Knight, who, of course, played Ted Baxter and Mary Tyler Moore, or, as you're probably more familiar with, playing the judge in Caddyshack, the original, not the never to be named other film. But he was a voice guy too. I mean, you have Justice League, the Super Friends and all that. He was the narrator for all that, and it's kind of fun to listen to the Comic Crusade, Comic Relief Crusader. There we go, Mike. I'll just call him Mike. And, he does a great impersonation of that. It's like, I want Ted Knight. I just listen to him. So this is kind of a little bit of the example on that one. Now, why do I have this in EU? And this has a strange, long journey, you might say. When it first came out, it was official Star Trek. It was, this is a continuation of the Star Trek journey. Well, Gene Roddenberry, I don't know when exactly, he started getting his going from from bird to turd. Sat back and wiped off. This isn't official. This isn't official. Even though you had the excellent story of Yesteryear, written by Dorothy Fontana, and expanding on the story of Spock, his youth, how he was being brought up, and even bringing back the Guardian of Forever. And a great episode. And he relented, I guess that one can be official. And you'll see those designs popping up with remasters and other Star Trek properties since then. But basically, after he died, I don't know if it's like Okuda, and his wife, or whatnot. They started sitting back saying, no, this truly is official Star Trek. These are official stories. So you can go with this is official EU or pseudo EU, pseudo official. It all depends where you want to go. But it did give us the first captain.
I do want to just jump in real quick. Yeah. Where do you land on that? Is it official or is it EU or kind of in between?
Official all the way, baby, all the way. If you have all the garbage you got going on right now that has the name on it, including the other animated series that they have behind the paywall that got canceled. I love saying that. These shows that are behind the paywall and get canceled. I love it. These, unlike that, these are serious episodes. They were trying to tackle serious issues. Again, the constraint was a half hour. So you couldn't necessarily get into some of the nitty gritty. It also has the distinction of having an episode where you didn't have William Shatner in it, providing the voice. So, and all with the original films and going into the 6 movies. And if you want to go with Generations as well, Shatner, there was only 2 that he was never involved in. And obviously that was The Cage. And then the other would be one of the episodes they had there where they, where was Spock, Uhura, and Sulu. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but they were off ship on a troublesome away team mission.
Okay.
So But Leonard Nimoy, however, has the distinction of from the cage all the way up to Star Trek VI, and then of course making appearances in Next Generation, as well as doing Jar Jar Abrams films, being in all the Star Treks up to 6, every one of them.
Yeah. So, question before we move on from the animated series here, tell me about that one episode where we see Uhura take command.
Yeah, you had to where the men basically started regressing into children and such, and the women, and what was it? It's like the siren something. Jiminy Crickets. I'm pulling some stuff out. Oh, you're going for specific things. Oh, sure, hurt me. But what it did was the male crew members were basically all incapacitated. And so it came to the ladies of the crew to take over everything and solve the mission, one of which, of course, was Uhura taking command. So if you want to sit back and say, the first black woman to take command of the Enterprise or be in command, boom, that was her. And that was the Lorelei signal. In fact, it was the 4th episode, so it was even very, very early in the series that this happens. And so that was the 4th episode. The first episode was called Beyond the Furthest Star, but Yesteryear, which is probably the best out of this entire lot. If people are not interested in seeing the animated series, I just have to sit back and say, at least watch episode 2, Yesteryear. That's DC Fontana. But you start seeing the names like Samuel A. Peoples was writing for this, who also did the original Star Trek. DC Fontana, like I said, David Gerald, as I sat back and said, we got Walter Koenig coming in there, Stephen Kandel, who wrote. So you had some, and you even had Larry Niven coming in.
Who was that again?
He has a book series about the war with a cat-like species called the Kazan or whatever, but he did his own version for this and just called him the Kazanti. So it's basically a kind of a soft crossover, you might say, from his works over there. He is well known, obviously, in the science fiction circle for writing books such as Ringworld is probably one of his most known of it, followed by A Molten God's Eye, Lucifer's Hammer. I mean, those are like books, but when it kind of goes into TV and such, it's he supplied a lot of things to a lot of people, and he was or is again one of the greats out there, and he was one of those that gives having him on board was giving a diametric viewpoint on the other side of, say, Roddenberry or some of the others that they had in the set, which is one of the reasons why this show was, the original show and this series was so great, because Larry Niven, being a conservative, he was putting his stuff in and his, bringing his arguments in to have people think, not to bash him over the head like an SJW. But again, this was all social awareness.
Right.
And that's where that stood and landed on that. So, yeah. And so so when you had this, is like, people want to dismiss this animated series, but it's like, hey, Uhura was in the command seat.
Yeah.
She was in charge, and she was a woman of color. You want to know something, Paul? And everybody out there who's listening,
what?
Like Phil, those things never happened, right? But this was the first, and we didn't care.
Yeah, that's
we didn't go out there and have protests or demand that this be taken down or want to burn copies of this and all that. For us that watched it, and I saw bits and pieces of the show when I was young. I wasn't fully interested, but it would sometimes come up on the on my Saturday morning watch list because it was on NBC, and so I caught a few episodes, but the short life that it had. I had to follow up with it when it came to, I believe it was Nickelodeon got the rights to it.
Hey, Black Dragon. He says, "Don't worry, Baron. I'm not listening."
No worries. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Trust me, I don't. I just look like I know what I'm talking about. A professional BS artist, I tell you.
Yep.
But that's what you got with this anime series. So in my heart of hearts, and with many Trekkies out there, I'm not going to say Trekkers. I'm going to say Trekkies because I was a Trekkie, and even people like Mike over at Pacific and Cash Money and others that we associate, they sit back and say, yeah, this is real official Star Trek. It should not be ignored. So, but it's probably one of the most ignored series besides Prodigy.
Right. That's the one you were talking about that got canceled, right?
No, actually, Gutter Dex did.
Oh, wow.
That one. Yeah, that got canceled. So Discovery and Gutter Dex, both of them canceled behind a paywall. You should go out. You should go out on your own. It should be on your terms going out. It shouldn't be, oh, you're canceled now. If you're behind this wonderful paywall and you're doing so well. But Gutter Dix was Dix. Why am I saying Dix? Dex. Probably because that's what it was. It was like, everyone fawns over that show, but it's like, no, this is just garbage. It's not even funny. And
I
vulgar sometimes.
I tried watching a clip of it, and it was like, this is just trying to be Rick and Morty, and I don't even like Rick and Morty.
Yeah. And, I never thought of it that way. Thank you. I never thought of it that way. So
you're welcome.
Now I got something new to ponder on.
So moving on now, let's talk about, of course, the part of the expanded universes that everyone is most familiar about, that being the books. And the best way...
what do you know? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The best way I can put it, at least from what I have gathered, for every show and movie that has come out, from the original to TNG to the TOS movies to the TNG movies, etc., there's books that are set between each of those.
Yeah, go on.
And I have like 3 of those. I got a hard copy of the TOS book Mud in Your Eye over there on my shelf, and I have in audiobook form Q Squared, which is the one I used in the thumbnail, and then Q in Law. Now, it's been a minute since I've listened to those, but I remember really liking especially Q Squared because it was written by, you said Peter David, right?
Yeah, Peter David, yeah. For all I know, maybe he did the second one too. Obviously John Delancey was supplying story and notes, and they're in communication, but when it comes around to the wordsmithing, it was Peter David.
Right.
And which is, he's one of the best out there. Books, comics, everything,
Yes. And I really, really liked that one because Q Squared, number one, it brings back one of the most memorable characters of TOS into TNG, that being General Trelane, where it basically confirms in that story that Trelane is a member of the Q Continuum. And I know they never said that in the show because of obviously when Trelane was there, the Q Continuum wasn't even thought of.
No.
But I know when people first saw Q, especially those that grew up watching TOS, when you first saw Q and you see that he's got very similar powers to what Trelane has, you start to make some connections there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of became... And yeah, I mean, that can get into a convoluted story right there with Q and how he came about. And again, it's Gene Roddenberry being the great turd instead of the great bird with that. But it still gave us a great character.
Exactly.
But yeah, again, he was trying to tie the 2 series together with these godlike beings, and no way in Paramount's eyes, is that story even remotely canon. It is EU of EU.
Which is unfortunate, because that was such a great written story. Because here's the thing, not only did it bring back Trelane into the TNG era, and you have literally Trelane and Q butting heads with each other on a cosmic level, but it also merges in these 3 different timelines, including, of course, the Prime TNG timeline that we know.
Right.
And it connects also to yesterday's Enterprise. Which is, of course, for those that don't know, one of the greatest episodes, not just of TNG, but of Star Trek, period.
I try to remind, because it's been a long time, but didn't it also dive into basically where no man has gone before the second pilot, and they explained why the tombstone had James R. Kirk instead of James T. Kirk?
Q squared? No,
yeah.
It didn't.
I know one of the books. I know one of the books did that, and it was involved. I can't remember what it was, but it was. For all I know, with Peter David, I can't remember. I've read so many stuff. Sometimes it blurs into one. But it was basically saying that that was a different Kirk in an alternate, possibility you had in that particular episode. And of course, in this, we have James T. Kirk. Because differences of stuff and characters, how they portrayed, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's interesting to see that dichotomy. And basically, when you have God versus God, well, little g, by the way, on both of that, it's an interesting tale that you have, and going from point A to point B and C, and what's going on a cosmic level, and how close to being human are these entities that think they're far above us. And officially in Next Generation, we only saw one Q2, but when we got into going, you had the one he was trying to bring into the Q continuum, that young lady, and then of course in Voyager you had the
Q Junior, basically.
And you also had the Q War, and it was the between the Q, and it looked like this. And they made it look like the Civil War to people. But it evolved. And John Delancey also wrote an annual for one of the DC comics. Also, an excellent story. This should have been official, and it's dealing with Q and Picard in almost that level, like tapestry or such, where he's showing Picard alternate ways of going if he had died or wasn't around, in case if he died instead of his or if his brother would have lived. And in that story, he actually had an older brother. Was it a younger brother? I think it was a younger brother he had, and he was both of them drowned when they were young kids, and it always bothered Picard. And if he would have lived, he would have turned into a dictator in the Federation, bringing into a type of empire.
So basically, it would have been almost Terran Empire, right?
Almost, but not quite. Yeah, I mean, it's different, but it's him basically taking control, taking over. You had, and in the end, of course, he had to be arrested, and it gave Picard some closure, knowing that the right path in history did go, even though it was the loss of his brother, and then having to see what his brother was. And it wasn't Q being malicious. Again, it was one of those odd times when Q was in his own way trying to be nice and give a learning experience, So that's what you have there.
So real quick, I want to highlight another book that I've read. This is another TNG book. So like I said, I've read 3 TNG books in total, because there was one I'd forgotten about. I mentioned Q Squared, highly recommended to anyone. Q in Law is more lighthearted, but basically the premise of that one is Lwaxana falls in love with Q and temporarily gets Q powers, and it goes about as chaotic as you expect. But there's also this one that I also have the audiobook for, that Jonathan Frakes did the narration for. Crossover.
Oh yeah, Crossover. Yeah.
This is an amazing story. It's set between the end of season 7 and Generations, where basically you have Spock needing to get rescued from getting captured by the Romulans, him and his Romulans that defected, that are trying to learn the ways of shoot, I'm forgetting the guy's name. It's not Sarek, because that's Spock's father. What is the one Vulcan that came up with the whole logic thing? I'm blanking. Thank you, Surak. Yeah. So basically, Spock and the followers of Surak that were from the Romulans got captured by the actual Romulans, and of course, the Enterprise is sent to rescue this, but also Old Man Admiral McCoy gets roped in, and so does Scotty, having, of course, been released from the Dyson Sphere.
Yeah, and it's written by Michael Jan Freeman, as obviously we can see down there, who I don't know if he still does Star Trek novels, but I mean, he and Peter David, you're talking about two of the best writers that they had for Star Trek on there, and a list of others too, which I'll be talking about here in a few moments too, because believe it or not, I had my slideshow thing here all set up in that order.
Let me bring that in.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good novel. That is a good novel. It is fun. And again, it just, it has that nice crossover. And
it does.
But now it comes to the point, let's quit having crossovers. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. But it's stuff that they didn't want to do in the very beginning, obviously, because they didn't want to be associated with the original show.
Right.
Oh, by the way, here's one of the close-ups of Scotty. And of course, of Nurse Chapel from the animated show. So, give a little look on there. But we're going to here we go. One of the Bantam books was the first ones to really come out and put a series out. And this one is actually like two novellas in kind of a novel, or in there, and basically he adapts the two Star Trek stories that Mudd was in, and then has a third one in there that, if I remember right, it was intended to be for the the next season, to bring him back, and they never done fourth season. And I have it somewhere around here. I mean, it's been a year and I'm still unpacking. Come on, man, get going, man.
Of course.
But and of course, it was adapted by J.A. Lawrence. And of course, needless to say, as a Mudd fan, I had to get this. And it's a great cover. I mean, look at that cover. That's just, that's the one thing you'll find with some of these books, especially the early ones, what great covers they had. You had, as you're going along, James Blish.
I got to get that one.
Right. James Blish, who also provided for the original series, and also a noted science fiction writer, coming out with this novel. Now, believe it or not, I have not read this book, and I need to. I don't know why I haven't. I just guess I have too many that I'm trying to get through, but I need to get this one going. But Spock must die. I mean, can you imagine being in a bookstore, a Trekkie back in that day, when you're waiting for something to happen and you see that on the bookshelf or in the little cart that that goes around, where they have all the little novels.
I mean, you saw my reaction to it just now. I can only imagine being then and being like, "Oh my god, I've got to have this."
Right, and so you're bringing in top tier writers again, science fiction writers, people who had worked on the show, and here they are, boom, they're contributing to it, as well as I'm going to bring this one up now. The Price of the Phoenix, and then there is a second one to this, which I also have in there. And this deals with Romulans, and Sandra Marshak and Marana Colbreth were the authors of both the books. I'm not really too familiar with them, but this is basically they were bringing up lore, legend, stuff about the Romulans in there that obviously was tossed into the crapper when Star Trek kept on going, and so this is very EU in that sad fashion. But again, you look at that, that cover. I mean, it's like, wow. what the heck is going on here? And yeah, it's, and then you're bringing back Romulans. Romulans didn't get enough of a run in the original series, in my opinion. But,
no, they really didn't.
Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, it's because of makeup. All those stupid pointy ears. Which is why you had a lot of people wearing those helmets that was in there. But the follow-up was this one here. Can you imagine seeing this on there? The Fates of the Phoenix.
That looks like a Roman painting right there.
Exactly, which apropos. You talk about Romulus, Romans, and the bird of prey, and he almost looks like a superhero with that
he does
mask on his head. But still,
like I could almost see that as being like a Romulan propaganda piece right there. Just the picture alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, join the Romulan Empire. Look what you could become.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Be all you can be.
Mm-hmm.
But here you got this, and you see this book, and so we already had Mud come back. Now we got 2 novels about Romulans, which were people were hungry for. People loved the Romulans. You had James Blish writing the other one. Now, of course, Bantam lost it, and then went to the current people, paperback or whatever. I can't remember who it is now exactly, but this is one of the first ones that they put out, besides, of course, the motion picture. Vonda McIntyre, in the day, she was one of the best Star Trek writers also. She contributed a lot to the Star Trek universe. It is a shame that when she did do her one Star Wars novel, it's considered widely amongst us, it's panned, And
which one was that again?
The Crystal Star.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to Timothy Zahn, and I wasn't dropping names, and I was being extremely, extremely respectful. But as I saying that, you have people who are really good writers. They're really good in a genre, but unfortunately, when went through another genre, sadly, it didn't work. Of course, he was agreeing with me. We were talking. He realized I wasn't trash talking anybody, not like some of the fans out there would do. And that's why the Crystal Star, sometimes if you look at it, it's like, is this Star Trek or is this Star Wars, or what's going on here with that novel? And I was expecting a lot, because it's the first one after. Yep. So you had the motion picture, and you had this one. It's a great story. I mean, Kirk gets assassinated. It's a web gun. When it goes in there, things going, and they can see in his eyes the webs going in his eyes, behind his eyeballs, and right. And now that's causing an issue with the timeline, hence the name Entropy. And look at Sulu. Sulu is long haired, and has a mustachio. And they even had kind of a humorous scene in there where they lost gravity, which obviously we never saw that in Star Trek. The classic stuff, except for Star Trek 6. And I guess he was supposed to have been in the shower or whatever, and when the gravity went out, and he's floating down the hallway with droplets of water and trying to keep a towel around him to keep him kind of modest, you might say. But other than that, it's a very serious story. Spock's, obviously takes command. They're trying to figure out, and obviously time travel is involved.
Right.
So it's like, what can we do to fix this universe? And it was one of the first ones Star Trek novels I read, out of a lot of this stuff. And it's like, this one grabbed me. This is a great story. This could have been a great movie. This could have been a great episode of Star Trek.
Oh yeah. Black Dragon real quick says, my favorite Star Trek novel was Blackfire by Sonny Cooper.
Blackfire, yep. I don't think I included it in my list here because there's just so many great books. In fact, what else am I going to pull out? Oh, The Final Reflection, written by John M. Ford, former Minneapolis native. The reason why I say that, well, I guess he still is. He passed away. Contributed to video games, or not video games, but role-playing games. Also, a decent novelist on his part.
Yeah.
This book was one of those that, it's not necessarily taking place in the Star Trek our heroes are, but kind of before. And as you can see, it's involving a Klingon and a Vulcan.
Yes.
You can see they're playing chess. Great artwork by Boris, by the way. Great artist.
Beautiful.
Right. And it's basically you get into the psyche of the Klingons with this, or at least
Real
what
quick,
John
is that a Romulan in the background of the picture?
I think it might be, yes.
Okay.
And it's and as you can see on the top there, only a Klingon warrior can save the Federation from total war. I mean, you see that in the bookstore. You look up and see that, and it's like, holy cats! What is this going to be about?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not Spock. There, it's a Vulcan ambassador, but basically off of this, a lot of Klingon lore exploded from this until you got the Next Generation.
Right.
Basically, Klingon words that were being used in stuff, because again, like I said, note the important part. I sat back and said that John M. Ford was also a contributor to the role-playing games out there, writing those. And if we get to that tonight, I can give you that connection there. But it was heavily used in Star Trek lore until the Great Turd changed everything around with the Klingons. And personally, right. I'm going to be hung, especially with my mic, I'm sure, when I say this. I do not really like the Klingons of Next Generation on up. I did not necessarily really like Worf. I don't think that was a really realistic portrayal of a Klingon that was brought up on Earth. He had too much of a stick up his rump. The Klingons were devious. We saw that they were devious people and would play shell games and such. You had this honor, and they still had an honor system. They also had basically assassination to get to the next level of your career if need be.
Right.
Very interesting, very fascinating, and Next Generation basically turned them into barbaric Vikings in space that happen to have spaceships and able to get around. It's like, how does this society even work? Right?
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, because the Klingons came what they became, they needed another completely antagonistic force, and that's ultimately where the Cardassians came from.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And of course, a lot of the traits also went to Romulans, because if you saw, the Romulans were incredibly a noble race. I mean, you just saw the interplay between Kirk and the Romulan commander when they're having their little thing. And
in another life, I could have called you friend.
Right. I mean, they were more people of honor, and that kind of got sent over to the Klingons, and a lot of the backstabbing stuff that you had where you saw with the Klingons went to the Romulans. And I
am not going to try reading that, Black Trek Kid.
Yeah, and of course that's Mark Okran's contribution. The first contributor, though, of course, was Jimmy Doohan of Spoken Klingon for the motion picture, and he expanded off of that, which is great. He did a great job. But what's interesting is you can fold this kind of together because, again, one society, you got subcultures. You got subcultures, man. You got different languages, or even different dialects of the same language within the culture. Try going to China and, from Mandarin and go to Sichuan. And yeah, it's the same language, but the dialect's so different that the only way you can communicate is by writing stuff down. That sort of thing.
Black Dragon. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Today is a good day to die. But I prefer the original, even going into the motion picture and such. And trust me, the EU did a great job connecting all that. There was actually two ways they did that. I wasn't planning on getting too deep on it, but I can talk a little bit more about it as we kind of go along. Again, thanks to John M. Ford, because he gave us our Klingon fix until that time came.
I do have a question. How did the EU, before DS9 and Enterprise did what they did with it, how did the EU books explain where the Klingons went from looking like that to the ridges in their head?
that went more into the role-playing game, and then which, funny enough, Enterprise kind of stole a little bit from it, if you want to say. And then the second series of Star Trek from DC, because I got comics lined up. Don't worry, they're out there, and I can explain a little bit about that. But DC, first, I'll talk about that when we get to the comics. Actually, I don't want to do too much cross pollinating.
I got
but what do I have for the next novel? Okay. Oh, the Cleon Gam. I bought this book just for the freaking cover. Just for the freaking cover. I love the Klingon D7. I mean, as much as I love the Connie, as much as I love the Motion Picture Enterprise, and the original one, I mean, the D7 is one of my favorite ships in Star Trek. It's sleek,
beautiful.
And in my headcanon, if you want to call it that, or my view, I always thought the Klingons were more advanced in the Federation because the size of the nacelles. They have smaller nacelles to promote to bring them around, other than the Federation that has to have these large nacelles. And in my mind, it's like, oh, these guys are a little more advanced in the Federation, and which makes things kind of interesting. And obviously, strengths and weaknesses between both empires, for a better word for it, to be generalizing. It was, yep, you're about the third or fourth one exactly. And I had to get that novel, and I had to, because just like I said, it was that cover. And it's like, oh, it's like I got that Klingon. And again, it goes into Klingon even more.
Okay.
We also had sequels. We had sequels to the series. Remember when Spock went back in time to that frozen cave with Zarabeth? With Marion Hartley.
Yes.
And he was suffering the effects of being a prehistoric
mental
Vulcan.
degeneration.
And almost pon-farring out. And it was heavily implied that Spock and Zarabeth did the nasty. And remember, she wasn't human. She was another species out there that looked human. And Ann Crispin, or AC Crispin, we know her, rest her soul. Again, a great contributor to both Star Trek and Star Wars.
What did she do for Star Wars?
Oh, she did the Han Solo trilogy. Not the one that the Daily 3 books, because that wasn't necessarily a trilogy. It's more of a series. But she did did a trilogy of Han Solo as he was growing up. Kind of basic. She did Solo before Solo, and a far better job of it.
Gotcha.
And various other little works within Star Wars. And of course, she contributed heavy with Star Trek. And it was, and she knows her Star Trek. She was one of the tops out there. And yeah, just like Black Dragon did, she did justice. I mean, these early novelists that you're seeing here, Vonda McIntyre and Ann Crispin and a few of these others, they were basically the proto leading into people like John Michael Freeman and Peter David, because they weren't old enough at that time; they were still young. So it was on their shoulders that those guys went off of. That's not saying anything untowards to them. It's just that torches get passed, and you have these great writers, and she's done justice for not just Star Trek, she's done justice to Star Wars as well. And so we find out that good old Spock has a kid from that.
Wow.
But Ann Crispin wasn't done yet. Boom. Time for yesterday.
Is that
the sequel?
Is that the son going full code on the Barbarian?
Yep. And look what he's going through. Look what he's going through.
He's going through the portal in
the Guardian Forever.
Oh my goodness.
They did not hold back on tying things in, and it wasn't member berries. It's like, what more can we do with this? We don't want this stuff forgotten. What can we do to expand on these stories? And as you can see on the cover, it obviously takes place later in the timeline of the series, but that was the sequel, and Ann Crispin was more than happy to deliver it to a bunch of fans out there, and they just ate it up. An embarrassing thing I have to sit back and say, I read the first one. I have not read this one yet. Because there were so many books, when you're going with this and other stuff. I mean, we were just inundated with books, but the quality of the books were great.
Yeah.
No, good to great. Good to great.
Yeah, Black Dragon says very few novels rehashed member berries.
Right, exactly. I mean, there was, I think, and those were more going to the later stuff, especially when you started getting into the anniversary time, around 86 and such. The member berries started going. But back then, it was not member berry. It was, it was a member berry would just be, oh, look at it. It's Guardian of Earth. No, it's an intricate part of these stories.
Yes.
Diane Carey, I got to meet her actually. She plays bagpipe and wears a kilt. This is actually her first novel that she did. This is going to tie into something else where the Great Turd did his damage onto Star Trek. But Dreadnought, and this is an old love story. This is a love story to Franz Joseph and the Technical Man, because that's exactly where this ship came from, out of there. And she brings in stuff from the Technical Man, other ships, and getting them involved. But basically, this top dreadnought is hijacked by, or captured by, quote unquote, terrorists. And this, Dreadnought has a sequel as well. Yep. And Kirk is actually in the back burner in this. Basically, the main character is the young lady down there. Again, well done, covered by Boris. And her team that's on board the Dreadnought, and why they were doing this. But of course, Kirk is involved in the crew of the Enterprise to try to stop what they could perceive as the fact that this is going to be used as a weapon against everybody and cause trouble, because this is the top of the line starship in Starfleet. And of course, for fans of Franz Joseph, oh my word, in that technical manual, this was like, oh yeah, more baby, secret, please. I mean, really, that's what it is. It's like, again, it's not memorable or whatever, but it's marketing and using things that hadn't been getting used at all. And it's like, well, we got this stuff. Let's use it.
Yeah, I mean,
let's not go and find somebody.
That's the best way to do it.
Right. And these people were true, passionate, fans of the show, but fans can sometimes go overboard and destroy with how they're going in there, especially with the fact they want to insert themselves and stuff like that. These are people that truly love Star Trek and the lore.
Real quick, since you brought that up, we got to mention, it is unfortunately through a Star Trek fan fiction that we do indeed get the term Mary Sue from. Because if I remember the history correctly, someone wrote a Star Trek fan fiction where there was an ensign that actually was named Mary Sue, who was basically perfect. Everyone liked her, but something happened and she died and everyone mourned her. Is that about accurate?
I think so, yeah. Oh, now you're pulling in the cobwebs in the back, man. When you don't talk about things, it's like, okay, let's go into the back vault. Hey, watch out, bat. Oh, there's a bat back here. And all that. And I can't remember the name of the sequel, but there was a sequel to this book as well that Diane Carey did, and she wrote many she wrote several Star Trek books. I don't know exactly how many, but again, another top tier writer. Oh, have you noticed something about this? Look how many of these authors are women. Even going back.
There's like 5 of them now at this point, including if you count DC Fontana.
Right. Oh, you should. Yeah. But I mean, you go back to even the Fate of the Phoenix and all that, in the sequel, that's 2 women that wrote that. Diane Carey. We had, of course, Vonda McIntyre, right? So, hey, don't tell me Star Trek wasn't for women.
It absolutely was.
And they were powerhouses in this. And what did we do as fans? How did we react?
We loved it.
Hey, this is a great book. Yes, Battleship. Thank you so much. Yeah, I knew it was something along the line, but I didn't want to embarrass myself too much. I know I could have looked it up here on my computer, but I got so many things I'm working on the back here for this shebang. This one you should probably hunt down and find.
That's a good
Of course, Kobayashi Maru. And I love the artists who did this because they know their Star Trek stuff. Because look at Sulu. What color uniform is he wearing?
Blue. So it's mirroring what the costumes would have been had they kept from going with Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Well, except for one thing. Notice the title. The Kobayashi Maru. And look at Scotty's uniform. What color is that? And look how he looks. Look how all of them look.
They look younger, and Scotty's wearing yellow.
Which he did in the original, or the second pilot, Where No Man's Gone Before. This is a novel from 3 points. Kirk, Sulu, and Scotty of when they partook in the Kobayashi Maru test. And things centered around it. Oh, wait a moment. It's written by a woman. We shouldn't even talk about this. It's written by a woman. We don't like women. Women don't like Star Trek. Sorry. I had to put that out there.
And real quick, just for reference, this book came out after Wrath of Khan, correct?
Oh, long after. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this came out long after. This, so obviously Julia Eklar decided to, hey, why don't we look into, what the Kobayashi Maru was like? What was and from 3 different viewpoints of characters that we know and love in the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
And he was a botanist, exactly. So he was wearing the blue on there. So it's good. You're going back again. It's not memberberry. Again, it's expanding the lore in this EU and also trying to help make sense, try to tie things together, and sate our passions to know more about it. It's one of the things where we like to say sometimes less is more, or we don't need to necessarily go and find out more. But there's certain times where it's fun, and we should boom,
exactly,
and there it be. And again, this helps build a character. It's not relying heavily on being a quote unquote prequel, but it is obviously dealing with that time. And of course, this is the cover for the audio novel, which was read by, of course, Jimmy Doohan. And he was a great guy. I met him a couple of times, and he just, we lost the spirit there. That's for sure.
Oh, did we? But I gotta highlight real quick the fact that his son has been, of course, continuing to portray Scotty in other media, whether it's Star Trek Continues or Star Trek Online.
Right. Yeah, he did Star Trek Continues, obviously. And then, of course, like you said, Star Trek Online. He also starred, not as a Scotty, but he did some appearances in some of the other Star Trek properties. I think he was in Star Trek The Motion Picture in the crowd scene, as was David Gerald, as was Okuda's wife. She was in there in that as well, in the background. Several people that were behind the scenes are involved, or family were in that scene. And I can't remember if he was in Enterprise or whatever, but he was also a guest star in one of the episodes as well, or at least a background character, a glorified background character.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's great that we have Chris Doohan out there doing it, and he does a damn good job of being his father.
Oh, he does.
On the screen. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, with Vic Mignogna doing such a great job being Kirk, and Chris doing such a great job being Scotty. I think that's a few of the things that really helped that show, along with Grant Taka. I'm bad with Japanese things, but he was also the one that was on Mythbusters and all that, and unfortunately died of that brain aneurysm. He was Sulu.
He did great.
He was a great big fan. He even got himself a Star Trek the Monster Maroon, as you call it, Star Trek 2 on uniform done up so he could be an older captain. We're going to be a captain of Sulu. Oh my,
Yeah.
So it was sad that he went. I mean, it was sad that he went, but again, when you have all that, boom, that Collie series definitely had true spirit of Star Trek in there.
Exactly.
And that's not to be an insult to Collie. Collie in his own way did things in there, including even taken a short story out of New Voyages in doing it. One of the more popular stories called Mind Sifter, where Kirk's mind is not only wiped, but he is thrown back into time, doesn't know who he is, and they got to rescue him. Spock's got to go try to find him and rescue him and all that. Great story.
Black Dragon says Chris wasn't in Enterprise, but he was a Starfleet officer in the 2009 remake.
Yeah. I knew it was something like that. It was either Enterprise or I don't want to even talk about the Jar Jar films. I really don't. But I know Seth MacFarlane was in Enterprise as a quick.
And he, of course, now makes the Orville, which
probably we won't see any more of. I think. I think we have to sit back and say it's going to take a miracle for that show to come back. But here's another one: Howard Weinstein. The Covenant of the Crown. Will the Klingons rule at last? So, as you can see, this is number 4 in the series. So this is the 4th book that came out in that little series. And the numbering system for these books were actually a little wonky for a while until they started figuring out what the hell they were doing. And of course, here's another one: Klingons versus Federation, and you can see them in their motion picture uniforms and such. And because this is the era when it's supposed to be taking place right after motion picture in the second 5-year mission, as we called it. So, and then we had this one that came out. Screw Jar Jar Abrams. They started putting out special books, and these were thicker stories, really deeper, more intricate than a lot of the other ones, because the other ones, the smaller ones, and which is great. They're fast reads. You feel like you're reading an episode or whatever, and I like that. We need to have more of those come back as well. But they're coming out with this, and this was Enterprise, the first adventure. Again, look at the name down there, Vonda McIntyre.
So, question: Is this Kirk's very first adventure as captain of the Enterprise, or just his first adventure? Period.
Oui, mon ami. This is Kirk. This is Kirk taking over the Enterprise, and I have some issues with it because Vonda was doing like everyone else seems to want to do. They want to try to force everybody on at the same time on the Enterprise. When really that wasn't the case. McCoy wasn't the chief medical officer. It was Dr. Not Boyce, but
Dr. Palmer, I want to say.
Paul, something like that. Yeah, he was the main doctor, and of course, like we said, earlier, good old. That's where good old George Takei was being the botanist, but they made him into a pilot. He was going around piloting smaller ships, and he gets the job as the Enterprise, and you're always knowing about how this was sluggish.
Yeah,
compared to what he was used to flying.
Is Gary Mitchell in it?
Now you're really getting my my mind going. I think he might have, because we are talking about the first voyage, and that's his old friend. It's been a long time since I read this book, to be honest. Funny thing is, I think I might have 2 copies of it somewhere. I don't have all my Star Trek books out because, again, it's a lot of books out there.
Oh yeah,
but they did this. They also did another one like this. Was called Strangers from the Sky, and that one they go back in time. As again, one of these little things. We learn that Spock is related to Sherlock Holmes, and they brought a proto Cybok in this story.
Really,
well. Not this one, but the other one, Stranger in the Sky. And basically, it's a Vulcan who's blonde-haired and is trying to, experience emotions. He's wanting to break away from it to try to understand more. Well, you can kind of get a little hint off of that with a failed character called Zahn that they were going to have in Star Trek Phase 2 series. That didn't happen. That was going to be a replacement for Spock. But basically, Spock's cousin was basically the proto Cybok without trying to kidnap everybody and go to Shakari.
Right.
And again,
hold on. You brought it up. I gotta use a clip that I ain't used in a long time. Phil, I hope you're still watching.
Excuse me, I'd just like to ask a question. What does God need with a starship? I said, what does God need with a starship?
Jim, what are you doing? I'm asking you a question.
That's right.
I'm glad you brought that one. I thought I said a bad word.
No. Besides, I don't enforce the no cussing rule anymore, so you're good.
Well, bleep then. I still behave. I still behave when I'm on other channels and all that. As you can see, I'm not as wild as I normally am with poor Mike, and he's a saint for putting up with me.
I've seen your wild side.
Well, you gotta fit the part for the show. You know what I mean?
Of course.
You had these bigger ones, and again, I really honestly don't think this needed to be done per se. At least the way it was for Enterprise. Again, it was too busy shoehorning everybody in together at one time, when it should not have been. So
right,
but it's still a good story. I mean, you got a beginning adventure. You got the how it all started out, folks. Oh, okay, and we're going to move on to another topic, but when it comes around the books, of course, Peter David, like I said, of course. And I'm not really, like I said, I wasn't really going into touching Next Generation because that's another rabbit hole you can go down. Mm-hmm. And of course, you talked about, of course, IQ and such, but he also wrote, stories about Captain Sulu. He started his own line of Star Trek stories. He also did Mzadi and Mzadi 2 about, and then, of course, I think the one definitely what you need to do, you need to find it. It's called Vendetta, and it was one of those quote unquote giant novels. And this story, again, good old Peter David, who is more than happy to make connections in this universe, brought in not only the Borg, and now this is a Next Generation novel, right? So the Borg are back, but they brought back the Doomsday Machine. And they discovered that the Doomsday Machine was a weapon to be used against the Borg.
Oh my goodness. I'm looking that up right now because Doomsday Machine, Doomsday Device, whichever it's called, that is like one of my top 5, possibly top 3 favorite episodes of TOS.
Same here.
And that is, oh my goodness, I gotta read that.
Yeah, it was written in 91, and I think it's one of his best Star Trek efforts out there. I mean, he's got a lot you can sit back and say, going on there, being the best and such. But needless to say, this novel came out not long after the cliffhanger, in the new season starting. So it's almost in some ways a continuation, you might say. But I mean, honestly, he did it absolutely beautiful, bringing the old and the new together and making a reason why. What was this Doomsday Device? Oh, yeah, I played that one.
I will definitely check. I will check that out, Black Dragon. I will definitely. I've been meaning to get on that game again for a while. Let me make sure I got it. Let me make sure I've got it installed real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun one, and the thing is, I'm not going to spoil anything. But yeah, you'll have fun, and it's going to be, And unfortunately, it did change a little bit from when it first came out in Star Trek Online because they were doing, streamlining and revamping some stuff. So, but it's still there. It still has the spirit. It still's got the Doomsday Machine, and Doomsday Machine was one of my favorite episodes as well. That and the Ultimate Computer, of course, iMud, Piece of the Action, Trouble with Tribbles, A City on the Edge of Forever. I mean, I think every Trekkie has to have that one on the list. And even Where No Man's Gone Before, that's one I still love too. I mean, it was really catching that spirit. And so, yeah.
If I had to just real quick list a top 3 of favorite episodes of TOS, I would probably go number 3, Doomsday Device, number 2, Balance of Terror, and then number 1 is still Corbomite Maneuver.
Oh yeah, 3 solid episodes, 3 very solid episodes, and it really makes it hard for Star Trek. I mean, I think it's harder to try to get a list of the best ofs with 79 episodes of Star Trek than it is even with 7 seasons of Next Generation, DS9, or Voyager, or the 4th season of Enterprise. That's slighting. That's not slighting those other properties. But when it comes around to building something with this universe and having that impact, I think it's easier to get a big list going with those 79 episodes and still have a fight with yourself. No, maybe I should be lower. No, it should be higher. No, where should I put this? I don't want to move. I don't want to hurt his feelings because it's so good. I wish I could have all tie. All of them are one. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I will spoil it. The butler did it. The butler's driving around in the Doomsday mission. We have to take the butler out. There. Sorry, Black Dragon. I couldn't hold it.
Black Dragon says, if you like Balance of Terror, then you should have got... It's funny you say that, Black Dragon. I oftentimes do think, what if I had done things different when I was in the Navy? And I could have seen myself being a machinist mate on a submarine. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd lasted, but it would have been cool to at least experience.
It's a different life. And really, that episode is also based on Run Silent, Run Deep. They obviously got its inspiration from that. Right. And you saw elements of that with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, as well.
With the fight inside the nebula.
Exactly. And so it doesn't grow old. It doesn't grow old. If you do it right, it just doesn't grow
exactly
old.
Now, what's this that you have on the screen? Okay,
I was going to take a shift now from novels, and I'm going to go to, basically, if you're an old-time Trekkie, this is almost a Bible to you. This is the Franz Joseph Starfleet Technical Manual. Yeah,
Hi, Virginia.
Actually, it opened the door so the screen because the screen put a screen door on the door so they can get that fresh air as well. Yeah, you're about as helpful as a screen door on a submarine there, Paul. What can I say? No, I'm just kidding.
And if you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Well, there is a bridge in Brooklyn, and maybe I will buy it. And that's one of the covers right there. Basically, that's that same cover, but with that little slip piece that they have going in there. Mm-hmm. And basically, this was going through, written by Franz Joseph, who did the art and trying to make sense of the Star Trek universe and put it into, this. I think this has to be one of the first out there book dedicated to expanding the a certain franchise's universe by showing where planets are, star charts, starships, uniforms, the interiors of the ship, not a full blueprint pack. That's later. That'll be later. But he did that. And of course, that's what it, of course, it's in that plastic piece, right? So that's covering up the book. Keep it nice. It's plastic, hard. But that's what the book looks like underneath all that. The Starfleet Technical looks very 70s, very technical. What you expect. You've been in the military. You know how that stuff looks. It's not the most exciting things to look. But you go in there and you see, okay, now this symbol, by the way, this logo.
That looks like a target that someone's been practicing their marksmanship with.
Right. But the thing is you've seen variations of this one since, right? With the different Federation logos. Each one of those are supposed to be stars. And then you started seeing it with, either without on the side there, or you saw like the laurel leaves and such. Here, Franz Joseph put, silhouettes of people. I'm assuming a man and a woman, or whatever, or anybody. It could be anybody. And of course, down below, he's got that color chart. This color is this color, and this color is that color. So, the black is silver, the clear is all blue. But this almost was a shot that Discovery somehow dodged, because Discovery took this logo and went in very minor, not even very minorly, and started using it for their show. There's a problem though. this
Yeah.
is copyrighted by the Franz Joseph estate, which is why you never
Ooh.
see this logo as is. And Franz Joseph's daughter, because unfortunately he's no longer with us, was contemplating heavily on going after Paramount for doing such. And I don't know what became of it. I don't know if it came to court or if they came to an agreement or they actually paid her. But he was the one that basically designed the various Federation logos that we saw since, including the oval ones in Next Generation, the big round one that you saw in motion picture when Kirk gets off the shuttle and it's on the floor there. You know, you see variations of this popping up everywhere. And that center one, that little center spot there, that's Earth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, and the three little dots there are star bases.
Okay.
And of course, these are other planets that are within the Federation. Somewheres, I think down here, I think might be Vulcan because it orbits a trinary system. And back then, it was called Almanac, Burak, and Zarak, with Zarak being the smallest. And that's what a lot of fans took for as being the Spock's home planet. Of course, we know as Epsilon Enduri.
Gotcha.
Enduri 40 or whatever. I can't. But you had that. Of course, we saw this banner a few times in the original show, especially when he had the funeral. And then boom, look at that. It's so he put that in there. It's the UFP banner that you'd be seeing around various events. They should bring it back and use it. But again, what did I say before? Well, it's kind of a gray area because he took it straight from Star Trek. So, Paramount can still have it.
Yeah.
There you go. That's Starfleet headquarters. I love this so much more than what they did. This is Starfleet headquarters. It's a big space station. Jar Jar Abrams did a variation of this in the Star Trek film, but this is how Franz Joseph envisioned it.
And real quick, just to clarify, this is different than Starfleet Academy that's in San Francisco, right?
Exactly. Now, and of course, Star Trek, as it went along, everything of Starfleet is in San Francisco, which bothers me. That's why I like the fact that, the Starfleet headquarters and some of the other star bases looked like this. And these little pods, well, I'll tell you what those are in a moment. All these sections here are internal sections, and it's like Babylon 5. So this is the ground. You have buildings and such in there, and as you go up, there's like an artificial sky, and they're divisioned off of each other. It's not an O'Neill class space station, but yeah, that's looking down. I should have gotten one of the cross sections and put up there. That's my fault. And of course, these are where the starships would go in to berth if necessary. Actually, in James Cawley's, I don't think it really shown much. It was his first effort doing Star Trek. You might say it was kind of a pseudo pilot type of thing. He actually has this, the Enterprise coming out of one of these bays. There's a dreadnought in the scene and a tug in the scene.
Another question. Is this kind of where the idea for Earth's space dock came from?
Well, they needed one. I would say in some fashion or not. They want to have something fancy and such. Obviously, it doesn't look anything like Earth's space dock, but this was not, and by the way, this is not an orbit around Earth. This is out a ways. This is its own station away. So it's
okay. See, I thought that this was basically what would later become Earth's space dock.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And of course, it's not official, obviously, which is sad because, I mean, my God, this is such a nice station. And there's an inside look. You can see how large this is by the numbers of the decks that leads up to the intersection. And of course, it shows how the ships fit in there. You can put 3 ships. There is the tug. Of course, they put the actual barge, what they use to bring it around, the barge or whatever you want to call it, in there. But it wouldn't be like that. Of course, your heavy cruiser and then your destroyer / scout class that you have, and it kind of shows you how it would line up inside one of those. So each one of those can fit 3 ships.
Okay.
Nice and cozy. And of course, he even shows you the elevator planes and stuff like that. How things are going. They're in synchronous orbit around the station, so they float within, because the station, I believe, is rotating, just like Babylon 5. But
Okay.
these ships are, they're in synchronous orbit within that dock. So, I mean, Franz Joseph did a hell of a lot of work. And here's kind of the listing of the ships that he gave us. You had that transport tug, the Ptolemy class, and look at that number, 3801.
Yeah.
Right? But this class could carry 2 of these, what we call pods or barges, whatever you want to call it. And you had 3 different types. You had liquid, you had dry, you had reefers, not drugs, but refrigerated. You can have personnel. So one of these can be a starliner or a troop transport if need be. And then, of course, products. So
Okay.
it show the ship going out there, that's what this job is. They even, as things went along, and again, can be touched on later if we make it that far. Again, I got a lot of material, which, good for a part 2 or if you need. But they even have what they call a battle tug, where this thing is decked out in photon torpedoes, phasers, and all that. And it might not be fast in the battle, but she can sure pull a punch. When I played a game called Starfleet Battles, I picked that ship, and I did it right. I kept out on the outline, orbiting around with the people moved in, and when they were so beaten up, taking out the other guy, they came after me. It's like, okay, now I can have fun. And that's how you play it. You don't go Leroy Jenkins or rambling it. That's what this
that
is
would
for.
be my strategy.
Right. Well, then you want this here, which I'll show you here. The Dreadnought. Remember I talked about the Dreadnought earlier?
Yes.
There's the Dreadnought. And yeah, I mean, people love this ship. And notice it has the 2 deflector dishes, sensor arrays. The shuttle bays in front.
Yeah.
You got the 3 nacelles. That is not the bridge. The bridge is down here inside for protection.
Ooh, okay.
Because this is going to be a battleship. Why have your bridge so exposed? Of course, you got your secondary bridges as well.
Of course.
But you also have like an admiral's bridge, because this is a dreadnought. You might have a commodore or admiral taking command of this ship. And they need to have something to guide the fleet while you have the other person doing the ship work on it, making sure that ship stays in one piece. And
I wonder if this is where they got the idea for the triple nacelle version of the Enterprise D in All Good Things.
Oh, I'm sure. Much to Andrew Probert's disgust and Rick Sternbuck's disgust, because those guys hated 3 nacelles or odd numbered nacelles vessels. They're the ones that came down with these ridiculous rules and how starships should look in the Federation. And those rules don't count, because even Next Generation, you saw 3 nacelles or 1 nacelle ships, especially in the battle, the aftermath of the battle, the Freedom class and various others, right? And of course, then you had the even though it's an alternate universe, you had the Dreadnought Enterprise come in, Enterprise D.
Yeah.
Dreadnought.
But this is still, in my opinion, the best design. I love this thing.
Well, I tell you, back in that day, we drooled over this ship, and as you can see there, it's under construction. They're not ready yet. So, I mean, can you imagine if Star Trek continue on with ships that look like this instead of going to motion picture? Well, that's something we can kind of talk about if we have enough time today. Like I said, I got a full plate here, and I always over prepare. But Franz Joseph gave us that design. Okay, you remember when you're talking about the bullet? It looks like a duck. Well, yeah. Well,
I think he's talking about Enterprise D here.
The D. Okay, the D. I was going to say it's kind of hard, but okay. So here we have it, right? So remember I said about you said the bullet holes. Well, there's Sol right there. That's Earth, Jupiter.
Is there a way you can make that bigger?
Oh, let's see if I can do that. There we go. I'll have to move stuff around. So here is Almanac, Burak, and Zarak, which a lot of us in the day figured that's where Vulcan is. You'll see some of the other names on here that relate to Star Trek. You have Starbase 1.
Yeah.
Base 2.
Yes.
And there's your Starfleet headquarters. It's all along this plane, kind of, or around the Federation. And okay, oh look, Altair. You always hear about Altair. There is Altair. So he had this,
and there's a Rigel too. We hear about
Yep.
that all the time.
Exactly. So here we go, boom, and you have looks like Klingon names over here long before, but yeah, Proxima, Quindar, and Rigel, and yeah. So he was doing that, and they're talking about how this orbits with the galaxy, boom, and the brightness of the stars, with everything. Double names are for binary, or triple names for trinary star systems. So that's why sometimes you see two names are three, because there's actually more binary and trinaries out there than we can imagine. And one person thinks that back and said there's actually more binaries than there are single sun systems. So I don't know how true that is, but so yeah, I mean, it gave us this. So we look at this and we're pondering over, oh my, where can we go, right? Your imagination just goes nuts. So
yeah,
let's go to the next phase.
Ooh, wow.
So
It's
that map I
complicated.
showed you? That map I showed you? That's this
Yeah.
little dot here. That dot.
Whoa.
So there's so that's where so you got Rigel and Deneb, actually you have on there. You have a listing of star bases. 13, 14, 9, 8, 7, 12. We've been to 12, and I think we've been to 11. There's Gothos, right? There's Cesta 3 when we had our little Gorn issue. There's the first Federation, which from your favorite episode. And this is where the Rare was lost. This is where the Constellation. This is where that big battle took place.
There's the Tholia, and where the Valiant was lost.
Right, we got down there. Here's the Romulan star. So this is like the edge of what you have on there. Well, yeah, you have the neutral zone, but you're kind of getting towards the outer end. But there's your Romulan Star Empire. There's your treaty zone. There's your little outpost colonies. We know one of them went boom thanks to. So there's 1, 2, 3. What was it? 8 that got hit. There we go. Boom.
Yeah.
Then you come to the Organian treaty zone. Now this is before we even had the Klingon neutral zone we talked about. This was the thing that, of course, the Organians, they will have peace.
Yeah.
So that's what they put up there, and that's supposed to be the thing that helps keep Klingon Empire and us not going at each other's throat. And of course, notice that Klingon ? We don't know where that is. Did he do the same? No, he didn't do the same thing with Romulus and Remus. So yeah, and you had that. So now we got an idea where the Gorns are. We get an idea where the Tholians is, because there's Tholia, the Tholian space. And of course, our two friends.
Real quick, Black Dragon says, for as large as the galaxy is, and knowing that every light in the sky is a system's sun, to believe that we are the only intelligent life in the universe is arrogant. That is exactly right. And real quick, I just want to point out, visually, I find it, I want to say it's almost on purpose that they did this, but is it just me, or does that map look like an eyeball?
I suppose it does, but I don't think that was the purpose of it. It just came out that way because he's, obviously putting the grids in for, where things are in relation to the galaxy and stuff like that, and the various. But yeah, I know it looks like an eyeball, but no, I wasn't intentionally done on it. But yeah, you could start sitting back saying, obviously, we know that's not what it looks like now after all sorts of revisions with Roddenberry. Okay. But there's a like the negotiated boundary zones. So, the exploring bond. So, this is where you want to go. You want to go here. You want to go there. We already kind of know about this. And, obviously along the way, we find Tholians and Gorns. But, boy, the Enterprise got around this pretty good, huh?
Oh, yeah, they did.
On there, the Organia, which they don't have listed on here. I noticed. But, yeah. But yeah, again, and there's the Intrepid. That's where the Intrepid was lost, obviously. So this is look like baseball. Yeah, I suppose it could look like a baseball. That's Cisco's baseball. This gave us young little Trekkies things to look at and drool over and imagine, and going into the store into there. And of course, needless to say, kids write their little fan fictions and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Some good,
Like I'm
some
almost
bad,
looking that as like a roadmap of, okay, I have a starship. Where am I going in what order? How do I track the best routes and all that stuff?
Right. Exactly. And this is one of the reasons why this book endures to us, and why us old time Trekkies still refer to it as the kind of the Bible in the Star Trek universe.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he goes in there and he gives us a little things like here's a layout of the cabins for the officers, the single staterooms. So obviously it's kind of like how you'd see Spock or Kirk. You have the desk, the chair. They have a door here, but there never was a door. Now, this is funny because this is a shared bathroom. We know Kirk wouldn't have a shared bathroom. But of course, there's the bed, the wardrobe. This was always changed around a little bit for other people's cabins. Even this was moved over there, and this was moved over there for some. But yeah, he gave us these little blueprints. Again, how better to start getting yourself immersed in drooling about the Star Trek.
It's helping me imagine like the space as like a 3-dimensional space, like imagining myself kind of within that layout there.
Mm-hmm. Right, and look at that shower tub with jacuzzi unit. Boom. How would you not want to be there? You got your vanity, and of course you got your little water closet, as they put it in there, WC, and with a little stall, a little thing that in case someone comes walking in, and you're dropping a deuce, right? So the 2 doors entering in, one to the office, one to the and this was the engineering bay back in that time, and he was going off of how the sets were on Next Generation. I mean, on the original series and such. And everyone knows when they're walking engineering, they're going around the corridor, then take a like they take a right and they go into engineering. So he figures this was up on the main level. There's your impulse drive, and your main controls, and of course he started adding in the later stuff that they had in the engineering room, because it did change, and they threw in some offices back here for the engineer, some other stuff, all across the board, and even gave you kind of an up, going up and taking a look at various other levels of this particular section of the ship. So we always looked at this. This is where main engineering was up here. Dilithium crystals were up there, everything. And then there was also, and when you saw the blueprints, there was more of a engineering layout like they had for the first season. It's like, in the first season, they were down in the lower engine room, and this is the upper engine. That's why they didn't look exactly the same or appear exactly the same. There's, they gave us consoles to look at the consoles. Look at that. There's your transporter.
Ooh. Okay. And I know and I see the 3 levers there to the left. That's always what they push up anytime they're beaming something.
Yep. Up or down. Yep. There's your power indicator, your various buttons. You press, I need to communicate. There's your readout. Then you have your coordinate sector grid, which actually was borrowed off the bridge. Your intercoms, your warning. It looks like a little miniature helm navigation, but it explains and shows you how it is. And again, it's like, now you can picture yourself. People actually made reproductions of set pieces off of this book because it's all they had. Either try to watch the series, see pictures from various stuff, or you have Franz Joseph, and everything's in metric, obviously.
Right. Well,
okay, so I'm gonna go. So the big crime about this, and when I was talking about the Great Turd,
yes,
this was official by Roddenberry. This book, he gave his seal of approval, stamp of approval. Yes, this is an official Star Trek, universe thing. We didn't necessarily have canon back in the day, but we used. But yeah, this is an official Star Trek book.
Yeah.
But as time went on, and we saw that because we saw images like this up here in Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 on the monitors. Star Trek the Motion Picture, Gene Roddenberry, it was more well, I think David Gerald was involved, or Alan Dean Foster was more with the writing script, but they took names out of this, including one Dreadnought name and two of the scout ships names that were in this book, and used them during the Epsilon 9 scene when they're going in there. You can hear the little background chatter, and this ship, please meet up with rendezvous with this ship, and this ship, have a good voyage, and that was the Dreadnought. So all of us were relying on this book so much, and somewhere along the line, Roddenberry goes, "Nope, it's not official." Screwing Franz Joseph over. All this hard work he did. Hard work.
Why?
Basically, it's Gene Roddenberry. He probably wasn't getting enough money for all I know. I don't know. Remember, this is the guy who wrote words for a theme song that were never meant to be there, so he could get half the royalties, and which is why we don't have Alexander Courage providing much for the music of Star Trek. It pissed him off. He walked off. So,
wow. Real quick, Black Dragon says the Enterprise F plan was approved by Majel Barrett. It was a fan designed and included in Star Trek Online.
Well, yeah, that was meant for Star Trek Online. It was a contest to design the next Enterprise. So people would be submitting in their designs and all that, and that was the winning design. Now, can you imagine being a player of the game and a fan, and they say, your ship is it. We're going to do it. And it goes into some comics, and it goes into, I think it even went into the Puke Hard series. So, so, I mean, that was a fan design that Majel brought in. But again, Gene's not with us. So you didn't have the meddling of Gene Roddenberry getting in there. Gene Roddenberry was a giant Ferengi. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha.
And so this book gets basically kicked off.
I just got to say, it's funny that you call him a Ferengi, and yet clearly Gene Roddenberry saw himself as Wesley Crusher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Wesley Crusher, basically that was fanfic. That's why Wesley Crusher failed as a character. That's why it suffered with the first two seasons of Star Trek, because, Gene Roddenberry basically being so delusional of himself, thinking that was all him, and shitting on all those that basically got it there, including Fontana and Kuhn and Gerald and all these others. Wherever he went, he left a trail of shit. Poodoo. There we go. Poodoo.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, I know. I try not to say naughty words when I'm on other people's streams, because it's, I'm in somebody else's house.
Of course.
So, but it's to kind of stay in there. Of course, if you take a look on the top here, you have Rick Sternbach. This is their book that came out at the time of, and he was a whiny big bleep. So this came out at the time of the Star Trek motion picture. Obviously, there, you got the Enterprise for the motion picture down there, but they went through a chronology of Star Trek ships through the ages, kind of like another form of the Star Trek technical manual, but more focused on ships. And as you can see, the Pioneer Days, major events, the turn of the 21st century, birth of the Federation, the first Enterprise, all this stuff along there, written by Stan Goldstein, Fred Goldstein. I'm assuming their brothers are related somehow. And of course, the illustration by a name that we all know, Rick Sternbach. And, look at that beautiful painting right there, the DY 500. Boom.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, I could
or
hang
the
that
DI
on my
100.
wall.
Yeah. This is what we got for art back in the day. The DIY 100, and of course, Khan's ship, the sleeper ship, the Botany Bay. Look at that. How beautiful that is. Of course, part of it's cut off because it was a 2-page thing, but there is the first Enterprise, which was one of the designs that they were looking at originally for being the Enterprise. So they brought it in and put it in here as a Starliner, I believe, in this one. It had me, and you saw this design also in Star Trek: The Motion Picture of the list of ships that were named Enterprise.
Yeah.
And here you get this little chart here. So you get this little timeline. You got this USS Moscow, the Baton Rouge class starship, and when it was around 2170 to 2210. Now, this timeline is different from the timeline we have in Star Trek. This timeline is way before places all these events way before what we now know, and when we got an official date with Star Trek Next Generation, when stuff was taking place with the original series and such, and leading up to it. But so you can kind of see some of this type of artwork made its way style, because again, it's Rick Sternbach, made it into the Next Generation technical manual for the Enterprise, as they're showing you what the next generations of ships could be and such. You have, of course, the little dates down here, like here's something about Daystrom, so on and so forth. There's that Baton Rouge class, which is kind of funny because DC Comics also did their first voyage as well as the novel did with Wanda McIntyre. This design appeared in the Marvel comic book series and the DC series. This was actually supposed to be the USS Saladin in the comic book, USS Saladin, which is actually the name of the destroyer in Franz Joseph, and Kirk's first command before he came over to the Enterprise, and that's in the comic book that they had for the first voyage, and of course with the interaction between him and Chris Pike. But yeah, in that old day, this ship obviously impacted a lot of us, including those that were in producing stuff, such as the visual arts of the comics and such. And as you can see, she's being worked on here over a nice blue planet. And look at it. It's the Warp 4.8 cruiser. Boom. And the years that it served, 2170 to 2210. And, all the little details, a la Franz Joseph, the warp factors, minimums, maximums, weight, mass drop, basically almost identical to a layout, but fancier than what Franz Joseph had.
I definitely see that.
Look at that date right there. Now we come to the Warp 8 cruiser in that book, USS Enterprise, Constitution class, 2188. So originally, back in that time, the Enterprise started out in the 22nd century and then voyaged into the 23rd century with that timeline. So, which of course we all now know that the original series took place in the 2260s. And obviously the Enterprise never was in the 22nd century, but back then you see how things kind of evolved. But these people were trying their darndest, and it's tying into the motion picture to make sense of everything and try to give a timeline to when things happened.
Yeah.
And
real quick,
Baron. Yeah.
I do got to cut in and say that unfortunately we do have to cut time for the night.
Okay. Can I just finish up with this page here?
Yes.
So these are some of the designs he made up. So there's the Patton, the Starliner Enterprise, the King Charles, which was the largest capacity starship in Federation history at that time. The Triatom, the Endurance, the Moscow, the Enterprise, and the Enterprise Updated.
Okay.
So here's another picture of the DY 500, and then we go into another book. But we'll just stop there because I told you I was prepped. I have stuff, and I tell you. We probably didn't go over even half the stuff I probably have.
Yeah. Tell you what, let's come back next week and do a part 2. How's that sound?
Oh, I could be tempted. Because, talking about the Star Trek EU is just as daunting, our EUs, is just as daunting as Star Wars.
Right. But the thing is,
huge lore.
For me, at least, this is so interesting. I have to stop for the night, but I want to keep going. So I think we're going to do a deeper than beginner series next week. Just this once where we just pick up where we left off.
Right. And again, this is still going to brush. And then when I get my little slideshow thing, then we can delve into even deeper and other eras of the EU, because you had a little bit of that with Next Generation, obviously. So. But yeah, I mean, I thank you so much for having me on to talk about this, because I love Star Trek. I love all this. Back in the day, offer me chicken wings, I'll be back. Chicken nuggets, chalky milk. But because this is the stuff I grew up in, and this is how I got myself sucked into Star Trek and fandom of Star Trek, and loving this stuff and loving the ships of Star Trek. I mean, this there was no dime bag. They basically took my head and pushed it in a pile of cocaine, like Al Pacino did in Scarface. There's just no doubt about it. And And this is why now you can really start seeing why people like me and others are so honked off with how they turn Star Trek.
Yes.
And this isn't even necessarily going into the storytelling. This is going just, the lore and everything around it that you can do the stories about. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I thank you so much for having me on your talk. I didn't see your message. My apologies. Because I was looking at another screen and still wrapped up. Oh, that was 9:29. Said we let's close in 5 minutes, and it's 9:45. So yeah, you need to break in like that sometimes with me. I'm never offended. I just want to let you know I'm never offended. I at your new employer here. I decided to bring your new employer up.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Get you in the spirit and the mode.
Thank you. All right, guys. So with that, we are going to go ahead and call it for the night. I do want to mention again, for those that missed it, last night, there will not be any more streams for the rest of the week. I've got other things I got to focus on. There will not be any stream the following Monday either. So pretty much a week from today, next Tuesday, is when the next stream will be. And it's just part 2 of what we've been talking about tonight. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you are also subscribed to Baron Orman Tagge's Fandom Legacy. He is a partner of Pacific 414 Pop Talk, and he double streams the Pop Talk stuff over there to his channel. And so make sure, if you're not already subscribed to Mike, subscribe to him too, but also subscribe to Baron, because yes, everyone that's on Pop Talk has their own channel. And while yes, Pop Talk is what brings them all together, they all individually need their own support and love. So go and show that to them.
Yeah, if we're together all the time, we kill each other.
Exactly. All right. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will talk to you later.